Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Well, after last week, after all the paranormal excitement of the Paradigm Symposium, this week felt a little normal, regular, not weird.
It felt a little bit like there wasn't enough paranormal activity going on in our lives.
I agree. But that's why we look for things. So.
Right. But that's okay because it's summertime and that means we'll be playing shows.
Yay.
And so we can bring on the rock activity instead of the paranormal activity.
For sure.
Like this Sunday, we're playing at Bratfest in Madison. Yes. Opening up for Kip Winger.
The festival of the bratwurst.
Yes, plenty of sausage at that party. Yeah. It's Madison's biggest sausage party.
That's right. And it's actually they set the record each year for the most bratwursts consumed, right? Or sold, I guess. I don't know if they
gobbled
that people.
The most bratwurst gobbled on the planet.
Yeah, and they have a whole variety of flavors. They have like the regular ones and the chicken chipotle and
they have the vegan brats for guys like me.
Yes.
And
or for people who just want to try them all. Try one of each.
But I'll have, usually we get our brats backstage and stuff like that before we play. And so I'll just sit there in like the hospitality tent. And I'll chow down on like 5 brats.
Yeah. And it's a fundraiser for local Madison
charities or whatever. I mean, whatever charity you want to work at. So it's cool because whoever signs up to serve bratwurst or whatever, they get paid a certain dollars per hour and it goes right to their charity.
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah.
And it goes to local things here in Madison and it's free. So you don't even have to buy a ticket. So that's the cool thing about Bratfest. It's free. There's live rock and roll. It's outdoors. They have some really nice sound stages there that sound great, I think.
Yeah.
And well, they have Sunspot on Sunday.
And they got Sunspot on Sunday. And so we'll be playing our paranormal music for everybody. And I was looking to see if Kip Winger had any ghost stories or UFO, and like he's never been abducted or anything good.
Oh, well, there's still time.
He did write a ballet called Ghosts, though.
Oh,
that was performed by the San Francisco ballet company and by different ballet companies across the country. So I don't know. It's not like based on real ghost stories or anything, but he does have a ballet called Ghosts.
Very cool.
By Kip Winger. So next week we'll be playing with him, and hopefully we'll have some rock star stories.
Right, because if he's in the hospitality tent, we might just get to ask him.
Have you seen a ghost story?
Which would be fun.
And I'll be like, would you like a vegan brat, sir?
Right. So if you're in the
He's going to eat 17 vegan brats.
If you're in the Madison area, we will be playing on Sunday, May 29th, the day before Memorial Day at 2:00 p.m. And then our friend John Messino is playing after us, and then Kip Winger.
Yep, so that should be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So that's what we're doing. And if you guys like our music, the stuff we put on the podcast every week, or just like what you hear on the podcast, then can we recommend giving us an iTunes review?
Oh, yeah.
All 5-star reviews get read on the air, and we even put them to music before. So.
And they make our hearts just a little bit warmer.
Just jump out. My heart jumps right out of my chest when I see a review. I'll be like, is that a review? Oh, yeah.
Is it sad that it actually kind of does? Like,
it does. It's
I feel
exciting.
like a little adrenaline, like punch whenever I see it.
No, I love it. I love when we get a review. So anyway, and if your review rhymes, we'll set it to music.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So just give it don't make it a haiku, because it still has to be 4/4,
and it has to make sense too.
Yeah,
please.
But anyway,
we're asking so much. All you really need to do is just if you have a minute or two to spare, just jump on our iTunes page and say something, preferably something nice.
Yeah.
If you don't think it's great, that's okay too.
And when it comes to our podcast, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything.
We all know that rule we were taught when we were kids.
Right. It particularly applies to iTunes. Anyway, so if you like what you hear, leave a review, and anyway, and just come say hi.
Yeah, and thanks to all the people who've sent us messages on Twitter and retweeted our show episodes and everything like that. We love hearing from you.
And we love getting the ideas for topics too. So our Twitter is Other Side Talk. So at Other Side Talk.
Yep.
Is our Twitter, and we love hearing your ideas and things like that. That's extra fun.
It is.
So anyway, but when it came to topics for this week, it was pretty easy to pick one with the news.
Well, that's right, because there was a major news story that's been really troublesome all week.
Yeah, and so talking about Flight 804, Egyptian Airlines. I mean, the story yesterday was that the flight was missing. That there was a missing plane.
Yeah, most of the week it was.
But that's the thing, is that missing planes, Flight 370 they never found. And so, of course, CNN,
right.
which during the whole Flight 370 thing, we'll talk about that more in a minute, that was actually Flight 370. It was called the CNN Flight 370 network.
They were so excited about that. Ooh,
that's all they had.
That we can talk about for days and days and days.
A mystery.
Right.
Mysteries, and we're all interested. Is there a tidbit?
Yeah, because that was freaky, especially in this day and age where we seem to have an eye on everything. We
all
have
the
GPS
answers.
Coordinates on everything. I can find my friend. I can find my friend Mike.
Yes,
I can
you
just
can.
look and see where he is on the map.
Right.
And then I can go find him. And so, you go, how does a giant thing like an airplane,
right, with dozens of people just disappear,
flop off the radar and
so that right, nothing. There's no radar flopping. It's not like Frogger. It's like radar.
I just pictured a big
technology
fish flopping around.
Radar technology is stuck in 1980 with the Frogger.
But people are watching these radar flight controllers and everything.
And all of a sudden the blips disappear.
It's amazing to me that can even happen.
Well,
it does.
And what happened with the Egyptian flight is that it had come into Cairo airspace. Mm-hmm. And so it was flying from Paris to Cairo, and then it had turned around with no explanation.
Mysterious.
So it's like it was coming to Cairo, and then it just turned around. And so today, unfortunately, the news is that they did find the debris of the flight. They found suitcases and remains.
And then we're recording this on Friday, so we just got the news, which is, takes the mystery away, and it's very sad, of course.
But there's still the mystery of what happened to the plane.
Right, yep.
And I mean, the idea, obviously, is that since they turned around, what reason would they have to turn around when they were almost there?
Mm-hmm. And there was no distress call or anything like that, so.
Right, so that they're right now they're thinking it might be terrorists. And so that's a tragedy. 66 people were on board. And, and that's a real tragedy.
Terrible.
And when it comes to a situation, like when I get on a flight, I've consumed all of the media about missing flights and things like that, over time.
No.
So it all comes out. And I'm a little bitter now. And we've taken a couple flights this year, and I've been traveling a lot this year. But I think there was a period, I hadn't gotten on a plane for 3 years. From 2000 to 2003. So I hadn't gone anywhere. Or I had just driven.
Yeah.
And any vacation time I'd had, we were driving around in the van.
Right.
So I finally am okay, I'm going somewhere. And so I was on a flight, and I get on in Milwaukee, and I realized I hadn't been on a plane in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I was just terrified.
Well, especially when they do in case of an emergency water landing, and you're like, no, we don't need to know that.
Well,
please.
and I hadn't been in a flight after September 11th.
Oh, okay. I see.
So the last flight I'd been to, I think, was sometime early 2001.
Prior to that.
And so this is 2 years later. Mm-hmm. And so I had done the whole, with the TSA.
The heightened security.
And I always ask for a groping when I go through. I'm always like, no, excuse me. I'm not sure. I think I might have something in my pants. I don't know.
Oh.
And so they hate it. They're like, oh no. They're like,
not another one.
Send him through the X-ray. Just send him through the X-ray. Can you turn the X-rays up when Mike comes?
Poor TSA agents.
So right. I'm just like, I'm sorry. The body, you're going to have to check the body cavities. And I figure, let's be thorough. And so we go, so I'm on the plane for the first time. And all I could think of were all the different
right.
And not just crashes, because it's not that I'm afraid. I'm not even that afraid of plane crashes, because it's this doesn't. I mean, less than 500 people a year die in plane crashes.
Right. No, it's supposedly statistically it's safer flying than it is driving.
Well, you've been on the road.
Right. No, and I know that, but you just logically
within the past month we've driven in both Minneapolis and Chicago, so we know how dangerous the drivers can be.
But I mean, when you think about it doesn't feel that way because you're getting into a giant hunk of metal that's flying through the air at 600 miles per hour. So
right.
It's this seems much less safe than.
Well, and I think if I was flying the plane myself, I'd feel, and not that I'm ever going to be a pilot or anything, but if I was flying, I'd feel different because your life is in your control. I mean, I could be if I was interested in flying, and maybe I would be someday.
But do you feel that way when you get into a bus?
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh.
There's been a couple of times when I used to take the mega bus back and forth
gosh.
between Minneapolis and Madison. There was one time we were coming by this recreational vehicle that had like a truck that was, you know, like how an RV can keep like a car in the back?
Yeah.
This one had like a pickup.
Like towing it?
This one had a pickup truck towing it in the back.
Okay.
But it was raised a little bit so that the front of the truck was equal to like the top of the RV. And something was loose.
Oh gosh, that's terrifying.
And so it starts sparking and everything. And we're right next to it. And everybody on the bus starts like going like, you see that? You see that? Oh my God. Like, you better get past them. I'm
just imagining the like things swerving and the whole bus being like, whoa.
Because it's a double-decker bus too. Because it's a double double-decker.
Yeah,
so anytime you're looking down and you're like, any kind of swerve here and we're going over the side. You know, like this is done. So anyway, I just remember that feeling. And I wasn't concerned. I really was concerned that the flight would go like disappear. I wasn't even going overseas. Like I was just going like 3 states away, going to like Maryland or something. And I'm like,
easy.
Like, what if it gets lost over the Lake Michigan or something like that?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
And that to me is worse than anything. Like
or going down and then needing to use that little inflatable thing. You got to like use the straw to blow up.
Right. That, you know, if they say, no, these are self-inflating. I'm like, how does that work without
but if
air?
it doesn't work, here's a straw so you can blow it up. It's like, I'm going to be worried about getting out of this thing. Like,
right.
What? But no, I always, whenever they do the whole spiel with that, first of all, it still makes me laugh that they actually show you how to buckle the seatbelt, because how many people need that guidance? Yeah, I know, but if you're a kid, there's going to be somebody. Right. Like, how many kids do you see watching the flight attendants and like paying attention?
They're just screaming. Mostly, if they're next to me on a flight, they're screaming.
But secondly, when they bring out the vest and they put it on and inflate it, it's terrifying because it makes me imagine a bunch of people floating around in the water with those things on, and those are the lucky people.
Right.
So anyway,
everybody else is on fire.
But it's all unnecessary because statistically, we know you are as safe as can be in an airplane. It's like kind of like tucking yourself into your cozy little Betty bye.
Right. You're right. You have a better chance
safe.
you have a better chance of dying in an accident or like a house fire or something.
Irrational
like that.
fear.
Right. It's actually safer than tucking into your Betty bye. Because let's say your toaster has a loose wire or something like that.
Or your neighbor's toaster.
Oh yeah, that's right.
If you live in an apartment?
Live in a condo like I do, and I think about that sometimes because I've got a neighbor that's not there that often. And I'm like, what? Right. Like we're recording in the clubhouse in my condo today. So it's, so he's not there that often. So something happens and his fridge goes on the fritz. And that could be curtains.
Yeah. Okay. This is just getting depressing.
But that's the thing. So that's how I was feeling. So I was worried I was going to be on a missing flight. And the reason is because there's been a ton of flights that have gone missing over time. And the most famous one, obviously, is the Malaysian flight 370 that disappeared in March of 2014.
Yeah, that's the most famous recent one.
And actually what's interesting is the flight 804 that just disappeared, like they already had conspiracy theorists trying to connect it, like saying that it's been 804 days.
Oh, that's kind of a strange coincidence.
It's 804 days that this flight has disappeared since the last the MH370 disappeared back in 2014.
But they never found any traces of that one.
Right. And well, I mean, they did say that they did find wreckage of it.
Oh, they did?
Like on several different islands. Yeah. So, I mean.
But they don't, okay, so they just don't know exactly where.
They don't know anything.
What happened.
They don't know what happened to it. So it said 5 pieces of debris were found on the coast of Reunion Island, Mozambique, Mauritius, and South Africa. So all centered around there. And the search for it was in the southern Indian Ocean, where they thought that's the last place they saw it. So, I mean, the whole time there was conspiracy theories about what happened to that Flight 370. I mean, and it was a couple hundred people that got lost.
That was a majorly big bird.
Right. It was a huge plane. And, I mean, some people think it's North Korea, that North Korea shot the plane out of the sky because Kim Jong-un wanted to have the technology of a large plane. So some people are blaming it on North Korea, and that not too long beforehand, North Korea nearly took out a Chinese plane carrying 220 passengers, Chinese Southern Airlines, that was reportedly passing through the trajectory of a North Korean missile just 7 minutes after it was fired. And South Korea claimed that. So like North Korea may have a history of threatening planes in the sky, or that the plane was diverted to North Korea, like communication stopped. You know, actually, there's a guy by the name of Jeff Wise. And he's a science writer, and he was on CNN all the time when Flight 370 originally had disappeared. And he posited a theory, actually, and he backed it up pretty well, that the plane might have been hijacked, and they spoofed the navigation data to make people think that it went south, when really the Boeing 777 went north, and he found evidence that it was landed in Russia.
Interesting.
And he has no idea why Vladimir Putin would have been interested in the plane or anything like that. And then conspiracy that happened as people that had checked in but didn't make it on board, things like that. Mm-hmm. That was his theory that he wrote in New York Magazine and on Slate.com too. So, I see. And he was one of CNN's investigators into it. So his writing was pretty good on it, even if they have claimed to found pieces of wreckage from the plane in, South Africa and stuff like that.
Yeah, which would not make it consistent with his
right. It didn't make it to Russia. It didn't make it anywhere. But the thing is, they didn't find it in the water, and they fully thought they were going to find it in the water. In fact, before the pinging went off from the boxes inside the plane, they said they'd found it in the Indian Ocean, and they sent in a team.
Oh, weird. And
they went down there, and they really thought they would just find it. And they went down to find the source of the pinging. They said there was nothing there, and even the U.S. military was like, no, we went down there and we couldn't find anything. Mm-hmm. So that's why he thinks that the navigation data was spoofed. Yeah. Because these people would be sophisticated enough to know how to throw off
toss the box and then
or create a different box.
Or software or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So, and then of course there's the tabloids that said things like the Sunday Sport in England said that the plane had been found on the moon.
That's great.
And that it had disappeared and gone to the moon.
Oh, man. Whoops, we turned a little off course here.
Yeah. Aliens would be the one to take the plane. Okay. They grabbed it.
That theory, that's a curious theory, actually. Because, hey, if you want to study humans,
grab a plane.
You don't have to go as far, and it's all chock full.
It's already in the sky. It's coming with it's like a tin can full of humans.
They're all packed up all nice. They've got their clothes and everything they need for a couple weeks.
That's true. And they got food and stuff like that on the plane. So if you were looking to study people,
right,
disposably, here you go, you had the setup taken.
And you have enough for them to survive in your environment for a little while, at least with the food and then
at least have the decency to return them, though.
But that's true.
Right.
I suppose if you're going to go to that effort.
Well, so there was a couple of things that came through with this Flight 372 that also were interesting. So there was a hacker group called the Lizard Squad that described itself as a cyber caliphate. So caliphate is ISIS calls itself a caliphate. So a caliphate is like a Muslim.
How do you spell that?
Calipate.
Oh, okay,
Caliphate.
Gotcha.
Because the leader, the caliph, it's an older kind of Muslim form of government.
I see.
Theocracy.
Okay.
Type of thing. And so this group called the Lizard Squad, a cyber caliphate.
Fun.
But it's
like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something.
Sure, the Lizard Squad, except they're Islamic hackers, terrorist hackers.
Not fun.
Right. So like Donatello isn't gonna sneak into your computer and say God is great and then blow something up.
I gotcha.
Leonardo might though. So somebody noticed that the aircraft in question was the 404th Boeing 777 to come off the production line. So what's the significance in that? It's like a 404 error not found on the internet. So that's what
really?
So the cyber caliphate anyway, they hijacked the website. Not an airline, but they hijacked the website of Malaysian Airlines and wrote 404 plane not found when people went there.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so that's
horrible.
a way to get attention. And then, of course, people blame it on the CIA. Even the French former airline director who was investigating the disappearance, he said that he had been warned not to look too closely into the case by a British intelligence officer who told him that he was taking risks. And anyway, that was shot down accidentally by the U.S., which we've done before. We did that with an Iranian airliner. The U.S. did that with an Iranian airliner, not maybe 20 years ago, 30, or maybe not even that long ago. But there has been several cases of airliners accidentally shot down when they entered the wrong airspace. And so that idea that, it might be a CIA plot in order to take it over.
Sure,
which of course there's no proof. And then other people are saying it's a false flag operation. That really they're trying to make people think that it was Islamic terrorists to create a war kind of deal.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure people will say the same thing about this Flight 804 because obviously Paris had those attacks a few months ago.
Right.
And
the flight came out of Paris. So
right. And to Egypt, and we know that some of the hijackers on 9/11 were Egyptian and things.
Right.
So we have no idea if it's a conspiracy or if the Malaysian flight was a conspiracy. But we do know that it's a mystery as to what happened to them.
No kidding.
And so these are the most famous recent cases. But the thing is there have been missing flights all through history. And so this one is just the latest one in planes that have disappeared. I mean, it hasn't been maybe 100 years since we've been flying, right?
Oh, yeah.
And commercially, it's been maybe 80.
Yeah.
So it's well within our history to know the number of planes that have disappeared. It's not like you couldn't find the number of ships that had disappeared because they didn't have, written documents and stuff.
Exactly.
But we can totally find out the number of planes. 1950, Northwest Orient Airlines, the bottom of Lake Michigan, probably.
Ooh.
Yeah. So they were flying from New York to Seattle, and they were going to go through Minneapolis on the way. And as they were going over Michigan, that's it. They disappeared.
See, and that's funny because the ocean is
big.
Huge. Lake Michigan, don't get me wrong, it's huge. I know. I grew up by it. But
it's a great lake.
It is great. It's big enough to be considered great.
Yes.
But you would think that it's not like, I don't know, it just seems like it would be easier to find something.
Well, right. But there has been, there's a series of also sinkings of boats and things that have happened. So, it's big enough. It's big enough when you look over and Michigan's 80 miles away kind of thing. But
I'm just in denial because I fly over it all the time.
Sure.
To get anywhere pretty much.
Right, we have to.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, a local historian claimed in 2008 that many of the human remains washed ashore in the 1950s and were buried in unmarked graves in St. Joseph, Michigan cemeteries without telling the victims' families. So that they washed. I think that would make the news though. I looked into that. I was like, okay, because I saw the 2008 report where they talked about that. I'm like, okay, is there anything on Google News?
Yeah.
Because Google News, you can go back.
Sure. It's
1950s, 1940s. And you can look.
Awesome.
They can search the
text
words
and everything. That's amazing.
They can search the science.
I know. We live in the future. I know. It's so wonderful.
And so you can, microfiche, and a lot of you listening probably had to go through microfiche, some kind of high school project. Unpleasant. Going through each page of the newspaper, piece by piece. Right, to jump off a bridge. So, first of all, you wouldn't call anything Orient anymore in airlines.
Right.
That would be no-go. And so this was 66 years ago. But I would think that there'd be some kind of report, because St. Joseph, Michigan isn't the place where human remains washing up on the shore wouldn't be big news. Hey, everybody, there's human remains on the shore. Holy crap.
Whoa. Right. Yeah, that would definitely be big news.
And as I'm looking over a lot of these missing flights that at least have happened in the past, 100 years. Probably one of the famous ones is Amelia Earhart.
That's my favorite one.
The famous female aviator.
Yes. I had to do a report on her when I was in kindergarten.
Okay.
And, they had one of those fairs where everybody picks a person.
And you picked Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, because I thought she was awesome because she's a female, one of the first female pilots.
Sure, and this is before Sally Ride, too.
Yeah, exactly. Way before.
There were no female astronauts at the time.
Yeah. So,
just a couple years. You don't have to date yourself.
Right. But anyway, I thought it was cool. I thought, and then the story, and just, it's tragic, but it's mysterious.
Yeah, well, she was supposed to be the first woman to circumnavigate the planet. Circumnavigate means fly around the whole damn thing. And so she was near Howland Island at the mid-Pacific Ocean. And her and her navigator, Fred Noonan, had a voice transmission out. They sent their last transmission out on July 2nd, 1937. And then that was it.
Yeah.
And then they don't know what happened to her. So, she might be somewhere. I'd like to think that
she's
her and
on an
Fred...
island,
I'd like to think her and Fred crash landed on an island, they fell in love.
They escaped to an island.
Yeah, so they escaped to an island, and they were like, well,
that's so nice,
looks like it's just us. So they fell in love and they started a family, and now there's a tribe of Earharts.
That'd be amazing.
Earhart/Noonans out there somewhere in the South Pacific.
Just living on Gilligan's Island, like
and what are they
paradise.
Right, and what are they going to do? Like they're going to make like one of those long canoes that the Polynesians used to do to cross island to island? No.
I don't know.
You know?
Well, that's a very nice little
You think they would have put something like help me or like...
Right.
Anyway, but then that's my theory, that they had an island and then they were just like, that's it, and they started a colony.
Well, it's certainly a nicer theory than the probable truth.
No, that they either like the plane was on fire as they crashed and they died horribly screaming.
Gosh.
So you want to think about that, or you want to think about
Wow.
the family? I like the family.
Yeah.
So Amelia Earhart, that's one of the most famous disappearances because, I mean, she was the female aviator.
And it was such a huge event that she was going for this record. And, you know, so everybody's waiting. And it was also one of those things where I'm sure they didn't have the tracker on her every movement. So it was like, they're probably looking up at the sky with binoculars,
Wait,
you know?
she never shows up.
Yeah. Like, so I don't know.
Well, I think that's interesting because when you talk about people trying to set records.
Yeah.
And they go through it, usually it works. You know, usually you'd have a big press event. You'd be like, you know what, this is going to work. And when it doesn't work,
yeah,
it's spectacular, like spectacular
so sad.
failure.
Tragic. Yeah. Because everybody's watching, everybody's listening and waiting to hear.
You know, I always think about Geraldo doing the Al Capone's vaults, and it's 2 hours of setup. And Geraldo's like, we're going live, and nobody's been in Al Capone's vaults for 50 years. And this is the late 1980s when it happened. And Geraldo Rivera is hosting this live special. Now, we've talked about these live kind of syndicated specials before that they used to do for, they even had one on the Titanic.
Well, right. I
like
remember
hosted
that.
by Telly Savalas.
Yes.
Kojak.
And I remember when Evel Knievel like jumped over the Grand Canyon or something. And I was just like, oh man, this could be like everyone in America watching a tragedy.
It could be a snuff film. It could be a live, it could be a live, snuff film on TV. Faces of Death. With kids watching. I mean, I guess that was a Challenger disaster.
Right,
like
right. But
because how many kids were taken and watching it live and as it happened. So, I mean, those kind of things, and it's just one of those things that, I almost feel bad. I don't almost feel bad, but for people,
Geraldo?
I don't feel bad I feel bad for his mustache.
So he opened it up and
there was nothing there. Like really was nothing. There was like an old beer bottle or something.
Was he just like,
he was like, Al Capone's
gotta go.
We'll be back after these messages. Somebody gets a bell. You can imagine him backstage like, you guys told me there'd be something here. I look like a jerk. But that's the thing when those kind of spectacular failures happen. And I mean, obviously, like Geraldo Rivera's didn't matter because it's just embarrassing. And embarrassing, so what? Amelia Earhart's dead.
A tragedy. I mean, right.
And that's the thing. When we talk about these things, like I'm not, we're not being flippant about stuff and what happens because a lot of this stuff is horrible. And so, I mean, there's several flights through the years. A lot of it's in South America, like where flights go disappearing. And those always seem like, well, it is in South America, kind of thing. Like maybe at the time they didn't have the technology or something like that. And, but missing planes. But that takes us to, we talk about South America, Central America. Well, we talk about the Atlantic region. And when you're talking about the Atlantic region and missing planes, you got to get to the Bermuda Triangle. Also known as the Devil's Triangle.
Dun, dun. Also a favorite topic of mine when I was a kid.
Yeah.
They had I think there was a Ripley's Believe It or Not episode about it.
Yeah, it was an In Search Of hosted by Leonard Nimoy on the Bermuda Triangle.
And I love those stories because it's like, whoa, this is really...
It seems like, there is a lot of stuff now. There's the alien shows. There's the Ancient Aliens guy with the weird hair. There's, there's plenty of paranormal shows. But it just seems like that because the 70s had a monoculture, because there was so... because, the 60s and 70s, it's kind of like why everybody likes the Beatles. You know what I mean? It's just like the Beatles are inescapable. Where even today, you would say that there's a good portion of the population that has never heard a Taylor Swift song.
Right.
I've heard maybe two.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I also sometimes wonder if these things, I remember them all as being so cool because they happened when I was a child and my imagination is a lot more active. So, something like the mysterious disappearance of planes in the Bermuda Triangle and the way they showed it and, your child mind is just going.
There's always something to being a kid.
Yeah.
Right. You look at this, like the NORAD talks about Santa Claus coming over there. You're like, oh my God, NORAD's following Santa Claus. You're like, yeah, and they're going to shoot him down. Because Santa's carrying communism in his sack this year. But the thing, right. So I think one of the other reasons, though, that things seem so much more believable in the 70s is, first of all, we were kids. But second of all, is things were shot on film.
And we didn't have Google to go through and Snopes
debunk every single thing. But there still were skeptics. There still were plenty of skeptics. Presenting. James the Amazing Randy's been around for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Not 1,000 years. Like, he's not some kind of mystical wizard that lives forever. That's Gandalf. Gandalf isn't bald. James Randy's bald. But things shot on film just seem more realistic. So stuff, and this would be, if we look at the media, Marshall McLuhan, the media is the message. So sometimes the way things are presented to us really does affect their believability. So when you talk about things shot in the 70s and 80s, every time they would do an external shoot, like they'd have to go on location, most of the time they would use film cameras. Film cameras look like film.
Yeah.
Video cameras look like a TV newscast.
Cheesy looking, or a soap opera or something.
Right. So that's why you don't, when you watch a movie and film is just the medium of it, there's more colors, there's more, it has a certain look to it, and it affects our heads a certain way.
I see.
Video looks like Three's Company.
Right.
And so you have that in your mind when you're sitting there.
Or like The Price is Right or something, like.
Right. And so that's one of the things. Like, if video was more believable to our brains, then we'd be watching more things shot on VHS. Or digital, even digital video now.
Yeah.
The difference between just an HD camera on your phone and a DSLR camera, which is what made, so many things look like film now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's one of my theories as to why stuff seemed so much more believable. It's how it was shot. And that just made it appear more cinematic. So anyway, the Bermuda Triangle, that stretches from Miami down to San Juan, Puerto Rico, to Bermuda. That forms a triangle. So Bermuda is northeast of Miami and north of San Juan, Puerto Rico. And so that's kind of how the triangle forms. And obviously in the show notes, othersidepodcast.com/93, we will have a picture of the triangle so you know what to avoid when you're going. I've personally flown through the Bermuda Triangle 14 times
and you made it every time.
And no problem.
Congratulations, Mike.
No problem. Thank you.
I'm really glad.
It was really rough going. I think it's just great pilots. I had a great team behind me.
They deserve high fives, all of them.
What I mean is, I didn't even realize that was in the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
I'd known about this since I was a kid, and I didn't know we were traveling through the Bermuda Triangle. But the thing is, so the first incident of the Bermuda Triangle. Now you go to some different websites, and they'll have stuff traced back to, they'll have ships disappearing, stuff that doesn't even, they'll say the Mary Celeste, which is a famous boat where everybody disappeared on it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It was leaving New York City and it was going to Portugal.
Okay.
It's not really a Bermuda Triangle incident kind of thing. Like if it was leaving Miami and going to Portugal, okay. But it's really more famous for aircraft incidents. And the first one is the most famous. Flight 19, you have 14 airmen disappearing when they're looking for when they're going through the Bermuda Triangle. And later that same day, there's another plane looking for them. And 13 airmen, then that plane gets lost too. So this is this original tragedy, Flight 19, is a lot where the Bermuda Triangle comes from. Because these guys were traveling through there and they got lost for no reason.
When was that?
December 5th, 1945.
Ah, okay.
So this is this is 6 months after we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this is really, Flight 19 becomes legendary because it's 5 bombers that disappear of the Bermuda Triangle.
Wow.
And it was just a training flight, and it was going from Fort Lauderdale. And the thing is, 14 airmen on the flight were lost, as were all 13 crew members of a PBM Mariner flying boat assumed by professional investigators to have exploded midair while searching for the flight. And they can't figure out what happened to either the original flight or the people. I mean, that's 28 people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 27 people who died in one single day.
Oof.
For no other reason than these guys got lost. And they were saying like, okay, they were coming on an area that was supposed to have like white water. And they're like, this isn't white water. This is green. We don't know where we are. And that's like the last transmission.
Oh.
And so then they just get lost.
Weird.
And Flight 19 eventually shows up in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Nice.
So that's the beginning of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, is that the planes from Flight 19 show up in Africa. And that's the very beginning, is like, what's going on here? And the idea was that the aliens took them.
That's a neat launching point for a story.
Yeah. But that's the thing. So these guys get lost in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. And that's one of the first really stories of it. And that's a big one. 1947, July 3rd, a Douglas C-54 is also lost in a storm off the Florida coast. Why is that interesting? Because July 3rd, 1947 is the day of the Roswell incident.
Oh, man.
So that's the day that reported.
I wonder what was going on in the sky that day.
Right, because it reports in the newspaper that on the evening of July 3rd, 1947, people saw lights in the sky.
Yikes.
In Roswell, New Mexico.
Okay.
So did the aliens stop by to grab that C-54 on the way over?
Did they accidentally hit it on their way in?
Right. Did they accidentally hit it? They were going so fast, they accidentally hit it.
You never know.
And then
Pulverize it.
I mean, it's a couple thousand miles away, but if you're going that fast.
Right.
Okay, there's no science based in our
We are
conjecture
completely
just we are
pulling things out of the
there is
air.
no physics involved in this discussion. That's like saying two people die on the same day, like on the opposite sides of the planet. We're like,
maybe one of them caused the other one.
right?
Like,
They both, they both were killed by the same guy. That's not even possible. We're not even in the wheelhouse here.
Let's not close our minds to the possibility. All right.
I'm not. I think it'd be like the plane's already destroyed. So it might well have been destroyed by a UFO rather than a storm.
Right, and if the murderer guy could be traveling through time and space, like you never know.
Right. That's exactly. He could have a TARDIS and just jump to the same place. Okay. 1948, the Star Tiger gets lost with 6 crew and 25 passengers en route from Santa Maria Airport in the Azores to Kidney Field in Bermuda. Azores are in Europe, Portugal kind of thing. Okay. So they're flying. So that gets lost on the way in Bermuda, 1948. Also, 1948, 3 crew, 36 passengers en route from San Juan, Puerto Rico to Miami. Gets lost. 1949, and this is all in the late 40s. This starts happening. 7 crew and 13 passengers en route from Kindley Field, Bermuda, going to Kingston Airport in Jamaica. That, to me, that's a significant amount. I mean, this is also the late 1940s, so we can see how. But
if there's a weather pattern or something over that area, that
But this is the original. These reports. I mean, this is happening once a year in the late
crazy.
1940s. So it gets written up in a magazine called Fate magazine.
Okay.
And Fate magazine is still around.
Is it?
Yeah. Huh. I think it's published by Llewellyn Publications, which is actually in Woodbury, Minnesota.
Oh.
And I had a subscription to Fate, I think, a few years ago. And it was pretty good. Always interesting stories. Lloyd Auerbach, a former guest on our show. He used to write and have a column every month, and that was my favorite column. So Fate magazine, they have an article about it. And this is really where they're talking about the Bermuda Triangle for the first time. And that's in the 1950s. And so, I mean, it kind of gets talked about every once in a while. But it's not until this guy named Charles Berlitz writes a book called The Bermuda Triangle in 1974 that it takes off. And it sells like 5 million copies. It's like a blockbuster book about the Bermuda Triangle. So that
probably spawned the programs that we saw on TV.
Absolutely. And there was a lot of things happening in the early 1970s, like Eric Von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. That kind of takes off. Charles Berlitz wrote a book on Edgar Cayce, the psychic who they called him the sleeping prophet. He'd fall asleep or he'd go into a trance. I don't know if he'd fall asleep. Sure. He wouldn't just be like, "Good night, everybody."
Right, but he wouldn't be like consciously present.
Right. So he would go into a trance and he would have all these prophecies about Atlantis.
Did he like talk in his sleep, or did he wake up and just have the?
No, he would talk in his sleep. So he would talk in a trance. He wasn't just
okay.
You know how usually when people are talking to sleep, they're like,
I hear the secrets that you keep.
Right, and the secrets you keep are Edgar Cayce sleeping.
Okay, so he talked in his trance about this.
Well, he in the Mysteries of Atlantis, and Edgar Cayce said that the lost continent of Atlantis would come to the sea near Bimini in the late 1960s. And that outer space visitors had constructed ruins on the island of Bimini, on Easter Island, the Great Pyramid, the Nazca Line. So this is all combining into this ancient astronauts kind of thing.
Okay.
And all these mysterious things are happening in these islands. And so Charles Berlitz was a researcher into this, along with the guy that wrote Chariot of the Gods.
He made the hypothesis then.
And so he's like, he's pretty much the one who was credited for popularizing the Bermuda Triangle in 1974. And that book is kind of what brings the attention. And of course, Hollywood comes calling.
Right, because it's cool.
Right, the planes disappearing over.
Planes disappearing isn't cool, but
right, and nobody's like planes disappearing. High five! It's more, of course. So, but the idea that there's a mystery associated with it, that it's not just. Yeah. And I always thought like there might be something to the Bermuda Triangle, like it might be some kind of weather pattern. Like when I was a kid, that's mostly what I thought, like it might be bad weather.
Especially with those incidents that happened in the 40s and stuff. It's like, okay, they didn't have as good of technology for the cockpit and stuff.
But I always think about the military planes though. True, I could see if it was more civilian planes. They're military planes, and they're guys that are used to flying in combat in a lot of situations. Yeah. Like how did they get lost?
True. That's a good point.
In the Caribbean. I guess it's not in the Caribbean. I guess it's in the Atlantic. The Caribbean would be south of Puerto Rico. But anyway, so the other cool thing about Charles Berlitz is that in 1980, he wrote a book called The Roswell Incident.
Hey!
So Charles Berlitz was a linguist who not only gave us the Bermuda Triangle, he also is the first one to tackle Roswell.
Wow, that's quite a guy.
So he is this guy has influenced a lot of my life, and there's a very good eulogy, like a little bio written of him on his death. He died in 2003. He was 90, so he made it pretty good run. Good run. And on Lauren Coleman's site, Lauren Coleman, the famed cryptozoologist, who we'll get to meet at the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference. We'll be hanging out with him in October.
Awesome.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
He wrote a very nice obituary. That's what I should say. Obituary.
There you go.
I keep on saying biography, eulogy, obituary. Okay. He didn't know him, so it wasn't a eulogy. But so that kind of sets the Bermuda Triangle, like that's what gets us all in our public eye. And notice, like, if there really was aliens there all the time, there's no planes disappearing in Bermuda now. It's all over different areas of the world. Maybe because we have better technology.
Yeah. And
we know when there's actually things happen in Bermuda, Central America, and stuff like that. But that hasn't stopped the Bermuda Triangle from being in plenty of TV shows and stuff like that. So there was an X-Files episode called Triangle, where they have a cruise liner disappears.
Okay.
And then Mulder goes to it's called the Queen Anne, and Mulder goes to investigate it.
That's a biggie.
Right. and Mulder goes to investigate it, and then like gets his head knocked on something and wakes up in the 1940s.
Oh, cool.
And it's a pretty good episode. It's one of those episodes where you can't tell if it's a dream or not.
Okay.
But it's like if he's in the 1940s and he's the only one that knows that he's from the future or whatever. And so he's on there and there's Nazis on board.
He's dressed in the period attire and everything.
Right.
That's cool.
But also everybody else there is like a character from the show represented by something.
Cool.
Like the Smoking Man's there, he's a Nazi.
Okay.
Scully's there. And I remember how they teased it because it's the 6th season. And in the preview, you see Mulder kissing Scully.
Oh,
and you're like, oh no, what are they going to do? Like, well, how did that happen? And it's because it was like in the dream sequence.
Of course. That's funny.
Then eventually they find him in the water afterwards. Like,
oh, okay.
And they find him in the water, and then they go on board, and they find that nobody's on board. And then he remembers the experience.
Ah, interesting.
And like he feels his face where the character that Scully played in the 1940s punched him earlier.
Oh,
man. So he still feels a bruise on there. So it's like, did it really happen? Kind of mystery thing.
Gotta leave you wondering.
But that was a fun one. One of my favorite TV shows when I was growing up was called The Greatest American Hero.
Oh, I remember that show.
We've probably talked about because The Greatest American Hero.
The theme song was awesome.
Right. First of all, I had a great theme song by Joy Scarborough, believe it or not. Which I'll link to in the show notes just because I love it. I don't mind listening to the theme song again. Actually, I had that single, like the 33 RPM.
Did you really? I think we might have too. I feel like my sister and I were really, really into that.
Right. What a great song. So we love that song. And I used to play it on my parents' record player. But so The Greatest American Hero, the whole idea is that he's a regular guy who's given a super suit by aliens, but he loses the manual. So he can't. So he's got a super
concept.
suit.
Oh man!
But he can't do anything. He's like a high school teacher, and he can't do anything.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
funny.
Yeah. But they had an episode where they go to the Bermuda Triangle to investigate a case of a sea monster.
Ooh,
It's called Devil in the Deep Blue Sea.
Oh, that's an interesting.
And the sea monster might be the one causing these accidents.
Okay.
Carrie, I think, was the sea monster's name. And so I remember that. I still remember that episode. But the thing is, most people think the Bermuda Triangle is just hogwash now. Like there's nothing really to it. Like because nothing's disappeared. Like there's that whole 5 years where a whole bunch of planes disappear and a few in the interim. But it mostly, it seems like one of those things where it's more coincidental than anything else.
Huh.
You know, we have a couple planes, like a private Cessna lost in 1965. There's some incidents at sea that happen. But I guess the latest one was 2015.
Pretty recently.
Yeah, there was a boat missing for 1 month until search crews identified the vessel 15,000 feet below the surface. September 20th, 2015.
Wow.
The SS El Faro sank off the coast of the Bahamas. But it doesn't seem like it's any more than anything else.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about Lake Michigan before. Like I remember we stayed at our friend's house one time in Wausau. We played a show and we stayed at this guy's house and he had like a nautical den.
Oh,
remember the nautical den? It was pretty good. So we're staying at this guy's house after a show and we're staying at the nautical den. And we're drinking beers. It's like 4:00 in the morning. And he's got a map of all of the
shipwrecks.
Sorry, I was looking for the word.
Yeah.
All the shipwrecks in Lake Michigan, and there's like 1,000.
Right, and we were listening to what? What song were we listening to?
The record of Edmund Fitzgerald. We were listening to the record of Edmund Fitzgerald. Okay,
it all like fit together so perfectly.
I forgot about that. But we were looking at all the different shipwrecks, and that's just in Lake Michigan.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And Lake Michigan is not the size of the Bermuda Triangle,
and
because that distance between Miami and San Juan, like it doesn't look that big. It's like 1,000 miles. Huge. You know what I mean? And like, there's no 1,000-mile part of Lake Michigan.
Right.
So there's a couple 100-mile, and that's the thing. So right now, people really think the Bermuda Triangle is just did I say hogwash before? What am I, an old lady? That's just a bunch of hogwash.
Poppycock.
Right. Hogwash.
Well, no, but it was a fun mystery to think about. And when I saw those shows where they'd say like the plane,
the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle.
They'd make, like what do you call that?
Like a dramatic reenactment.
Yes, thank you. A reenactment, and they would show, the pilot, and then all of a sudden he gets into this weird looking fog.
And it's always cheesy special effects, like the lights change on the pilot and stuff. He starts looking nervous.
And then the instrument panels start like going around and around. And it just, the whole visual of all of that was just cool. And it's
like unsolved mysteries.
Like he entered into some kind of weird force field or something, right?
Well, the most famous pop culture missing plane that we've had in the past, 20 years is probably Lost.
Very popular.
And did we just talk about Lost last week?
I feel like we did.
And I was like, I miss it sometimes. I think I just said like, I still miss Lost.
And I haven't even made my way through the whole series yet, so.
But I mean, the idea that a plane disappears.
Yeah.
And it's a complete mystery and no one knows what happened to it. I mean,
it's pretty cool.
Flight 370 was a real life Lost. Mm-hmm. Except in Lost, there were some survivors that eventually made it back to the island.
No spoilers.
So I try not to spoil it. I've been off the air for 6 years.
I still need to watch it.
I think it's all on Netflix, so it's worth it.
Cool. Perfect.
It peaks at season 5 for me, but that's okay. Anyway, but Lost is the most famous. And people were actually coming up with similarities between the Oceanic Airlines flight, the Oceanic Airlines flight in Lost, and then Flight 370. The similarities, the disappearance, the how when they found debris, like in Lost. You've seen the pilot episode, so you know that the plane split in half,
right?
And then there's a tail part of the plane, and there's a middle part of the plane, and that kind of thing. So I mean, Lost is probably the pop culture most people relate to with missing flights, but there's been plenty others. There was a movie came out, and this has a connection to you actually. A long time ago when I was not that big of a connection. So
I'm not the star of it.
No, but I remember renting this on VHS when I was a kid.
Oh gosh.
And it's a movie called Millennium.
Okay.
And the idea of Millennium is that time travelers from the future show up on airplanes that they are about to crash. They save the people's lives and then bring them back to the future and leave copies of the bodies.
Okay.
So they know when people are going to die.
Another very creative concept there.
So they save the people's lives and they bring them to the future. But the idea is that every time they travel in time and change things a little bit, it creates a time quake.
Yeah, of course.
You know, of course, a time quake.
That.
It's very scientific. Hello, time quake, dumbass. And then there's an investigator that's looking into what's happening. You know, he's a flight or like a FAA investigator, played by Chris Christopherson.
Oh, look at that!
Back when he was still a heartthrob.
Yes, and that ties into me because I was on a flight with him.
You were on a flight with Chris Christopherson. Yeah.
You know, we were flying together.
You're hanging out. He played you, me and Bobby McGee. He's like, there's a little song I wrote for you, Wendy.
No, I just saw him on my flight. And somebody behind, like, my sister and I heard some lady say, like, I think that's Kenny Rogers up front.
That's the best.
It's great. Anyway.
So that's funny because Chris Christopherson was like a Rhodes Scholar too.
Really?
Yeah. You know, I think Chris Christopherson's roommate, maybe he wasn't a Rhodes, but I think his roommate was Al Gore.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, so anyway.
Celebrity worlds collide.
Right. Celebrity worlds collide. The creator of the internet and the man from Blade that
and Wendy from See You on the Other Side.
All collide in one place.
My 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon is getting like easier and easier.
Way shorter. So anyway, so Chris Christopherson's there, and he's a National Transportation Safety Board investigator, not FAA investigator.
Okay.
But he's investigating it. And there's a theoretical physicist that thinks that there's some time travel shenanigans involved, and they eventually figure out that people from the future are
catch
coming.
Onto it.
They're grabbing people when they die. And
shenanigans.
Right. And that was
hogwash.
And that was a totally cool movie that I thought was totally sweet.
I want to watch that now.
When I was a kid. Yeah, Millennium is the name of the movie. So that's a fun one. Missing flights. There's a good episode of Torchwood. And Torchwood is a spinoff of Doctor Who that came out around 2006. Mm-hmm. And so with the idea of Torchwood is there's like a cosmic rift over Cardiff in Wales.
Okay.
And so they used Cardiff in Wales because that's where they were shooting.
That's convenient.
That's where they were shooting the show, and that's where
pretty there.
You shoot there instead of in London to save money. Right. And I did a whole trek out to where the Torchwood base was and things like that. So I visited Cardiff Bay and everything, looking for the building, like where they like sneak in. And it's so cool. I went on a Doctor Who pilgrimage. And so I brought in some Torchwood stuff too. And anyway, so it's an episode called Out of Time, and it's about a plane that flies out of Wales in like 1952, and it flies through the rift, and it comes out in 2007.
Oh, sweet.
And so it's what happens to those people who are...
Gosh, that would be so confusing.
And there's no going back. There's no going back to 1952, so they just go to the future, and that's it. They go 55 years in the future, and it's kind of what happens to them. It is part of its... really sad.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not going to spoil it because it's definitely, Torchwood's first season is very uneven, but there's a few episodes that really stand out, and that's one of them.
Oh.
I think so. I really enjoyed that. So, the bad news is that I don't think the Bermuda Triangle is real. I'm not gonna, and I don't think it's aliens. I just think it's bad 1940s equipment.
Wait a minute. The Bermuda Triangle is real.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm just saying, like, we can prove.
Right. There's actually
geographically it exists.
There's ocean there.
Right.
Correct.
However, the mysteries or the claims that it's something mysterious, perhaps you're not sold on those.
I'm not, and in the beginning I was.
Yeah.
But I still think it might be some kind of weather anomaly or anything.
Yeah.
There's just nothing that says aliens.
And the thing is that a lot of times when you look at the numbers and you look at the statistics, you just have to, even though your mind immediately wants to draw these similarities to things like that, you look at the statistics, just like the flight thing, it's safer to fly.
Yes, and right, when you look at the kind of stuff that happened. Now, I'm not saying that it wasn't a coincidence that all these things happened, and it's a tragedy and everything, but just like Flight 370, like, do I really think that was a CIA operation, or do sometimes planes go down? Or sometimes bad luck happens, or planes get. The plane could have been shot out of the sky, and that could be a cover up. but that's not paranormal. That's an accident.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, I think if we did that, or if any government did that, you'd own up to it. Like we had to do that with Iran.
Why else would you?
You're like, hey, we really screwed up. Like, please, let's not have a kind of terrorist repercussions happen here.
Right. Well, the other thing to consider, though, is that, if aliens were to come and snatch a plane, like they could say, hey, look at this triangle area. People already think something weird's going on there. So if we just snatch a plane from there, like
we just grab them.
Yeah, exactly.
Just snatch them.
Like that'd be a good spot to do it.
It would be.
Saying,
And I'm not saying that it can't be aliens, but I just think
evidence would
in a lot of these
believe.
things that it might be an accident, and it might be, it could be things blown out of the sky. I mean, we also had that too, that plane over Lockerbie, Scotland, that happened in 1987, and all those people died. Like it could be something terrorist related too. Unfortunately, that's the danger. So anyway, that's missing planes. That's a little bit. That's a little bit of background on missing planes, and also the different TV shows and films that have kind of covered those in the meantime.
Right.
And we'll do an entire episode on the disappearance of the Mary Celeste. And there's different kinds of individual mysteries we can dive into for kind of a missing vehicles 201 or something like that.
Sounds good to me.
So it's always hard to turn down an opportunity to use the word devil in the title of a song, especially when the other name for the Bermuda Triangle is the Devil's Triangle. So that's what we decided to name this week's Sunspot song, The Devil's Triangle.
You see the light when you're in the deep. Just on the surface, somewhere above your reach. But you're too far to be found. If you wanna meet the devil, you have to go.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
That's just a bunch of hogwash. Right, hogwash.